Hey everybody. So this is a story that came out of the New York Times, and basically it's an Amazon vice president quit over firing of employees who protested. And I found this story to be particularly interesting, just revolving all of the strikes that have happened within Amazon in these past weeks, and then just kind of the sentiment we're seeing from workers all over the country. Let me read some of the story to you guys. So, a prominent engineer and vice president of Amazon's cloud computing arm said on Monday that he had quit in dismay over the recent firings of workers who had raised questions about workplace safety during the coronavirus pandemic. Tim Bray, an engineer who had been vice president of Amazon Web Services, wrote in a blog post that his last day at the company was on Friday. He criticized a number of recent firings by Amazon, including that of an employee in Staten Island warehouse, Christian Smalls, who led a protest in March calling for the company to provide workers with more protections. And I mean, so what this person was arguing for, Christian Smalls, I mean, we got to remember, like, it's not like he was like asking for something like super grand or anything. He just wanted more protections because I mean, you have workers out there right now that are terrified. Like you see people there and they're so scared. They're in these like high risk situations, and the death toll just keeps going up and up with the coronavirus, and just people are worried and people are scared. And so this guy wanted to organize to try and get these protections, and he was let go because of it. And I mean, let's keep reading, first of all. Mr. Small's firing has drawn the scrutiny of New York State's Attorney General. Mr. Bray also criticized the firing last month of two Amazon employees, Marin Costa and Emily Cunningham, who circulated a petition in March on internal email lists that called on Amazon to expand sick leave, hazard pay, and childcare for warehouse workers. They had also helped organize a virtual event for warehouse employees to speak to tech workers at the company about its workplace conditions and coronavirus response. Um, and so, I mean, first of all, I mean, like, childcare, paid sick leave, those are two things that I think should be a given just in any economy, not just like a economy in the midst of a pandemic. I think that we as a country should have mandatory paid sick leave, or not just paid sick leave, just paid time off, just like most other developed countries. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have paid time off mandated by law. I mean, I always talk about Scandinavian countries, but a lot of them, they'll have like over a month of paid time off a year. And so that's kind of helped them out through all of this because it's built into the system a little bit where people are not working for periods of time. Obviously, they're still suffering. I think almost every country is suffering to a degree, but you see these countries in Scandinavia who are just doing so much better, because they have such this strong social safety net built into their society, and they are equipped for the government to kind of help people when they're down. Like they have the infrastructure for that, and the U.S. just flat out doesn't have the infrastructure. Same with universal child care. I think that is super important. I think that definitely in terms of hazard pay. I mean, obviously it's not always hazard pay, but I do think that there's certainly room for more. We need a strong labor movement in this country. We need more people to unionize. We need to support unions, and kind of one of the things that comes from that is higher pay. But I mean, what they're asking for is hazard pay because they're working in such dangerous conditions, so that they should be compensated for the danger that they're putting themselves in. So let's go a little farther. Mr. Bray, who had worked for the company for more than 5 years, called the fired workers whistleblowers and said that firing them was evidence of a vein of toxicity running through the company culture. I choose neither to serve nor drink that poison, he wrote. Amazon declined to comment on Monday. The company had previously said it fired Mr. Smalls because he had violated his policies by leaving a quarantine. He had previously been exposed to a sick worker to attend a protest at the site. Um, I mean, I just think that it is fantastic to have this, I guess, former VP to show this kind of solidarity with the workers of Amazon, and I mean, to an extent, just workers across the country. And I don't consider myself like an accelerationist. Like I don't want things to get just so bad that like the system collapses and there's big social change comes through that. I really don't want that to happen. I mean, if we could just like have this like things just slowly get better, 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 better. I totally support that. But as of right now, it definitely looks like we are in more of a position where things are just going to get so bad, where change is all but inevitable. Because we're seeing so much, we're seeing this upward injection of wealth to like the people at the top, and we are seeing this like consolidation of power at the top. Because one of the results of these closures is just after a certain point, like many small businesses are just not going to be able to survive these closures because they aren't being properly subsidized by the government. They aren't being like helped out. Like a lot of the money that was supposed to go to small businesses in the stimulus package that was passed was just eaten up by larger corporations. You had like uh, the Harvard Endowment Fund. Like they took some of the small business money. You had like other large corporations like Shakey's Pizza or something, but which is not like a local restaurant. It's like a chain restaurant, like eating up this money that was for small businesses. And I've heard people say that like, why was the money for small businesses capped to begin with? Like why there was no reason that it should be capped. It should have been for just all the small businesses that need it, because what's going to happen is after a certain amount of time, when these closures last for a long time, these small businesses just aren't going to be able to reopen. And so guess where a lot of the competition leaves? All the small business competition is going to be gone, and just these large corporations, they are going to be all that's left. And then they have a better case than ever for why they can't fail. The whole too big to fail argument becomes even more extreme when you literally have all the small businesses just being wiped out. And so workers will be at the mercy of these large corporations. And I mean, frankly, I just don't think that that's people are going to stand for that necessarily. I mean, we're seeing it already with some of the protests, and I know that they have an incredibly right wing leaning, but I do think that in some instances they're coming from a very real place of people who are suffering through this, people who aren't able to afford some certain bare necessities. They aren't able to afford like the payments for their cars, the payment, rent. They aren't able to afford, food in some instances. And we're even seeing this in the way more of on the left with this organizing around a rent strike. And I think that while I honestly don't know how I feel about a rent strike, and people will say like, oh, like, like landlords are, people too. Obviously, they also there are obviously small landlords that depend on this as the money that they get from rent as like that is their only source of income. And then you also have like large corporations that own large swaths of like apartment complexes and everything, and they're not really going to hurt that much if they don't get the rent. But regardless, like whether or not like people agree with an organized rent strike, to an extent, a rent strike is going to come, effectively a rent strike when just a large number of people aren't able to pay their rent. Like if this lasts till June 1st, think about all the people who aren't going to be able to pay their rent. And every week, I mean, it's not even a news story anymore. All the people who are becoming unemployed every week, it's millions and millions more are becoming unemployed. Over 30 million people have become unemployed due to all this. I mean, this system is crumbling right now. We are watching it crumble before our eyes. And Congress had the audacity to pass the stimulus package with just pitiful provisions for actual people. It's legitimately pitiful, especially when you look at what other countries have done with their stimulus packages. But not only is it poor stimulus for the people at the bottom, it is outrageous stimulus for the people at the top. Just these massive forgivable loans given to these large corporations with virtually no strings attached. Like there were provisions about like stock buybacks with some of these things, and the provisions only lasted for a year. It's like if you're getting bailed out, you shouldn't be able to buy back stock with any of the money. That shouldn't be allowed. There's like no regulation against like, oh, you can't give like bonuses to executives in these like for some of the loans that were given to large corporations. There were all sorts of like things that should have been in there. Like, in some instances, there were like not situations like small businesses were required to keep more people on like their payroll if they wanted the stimulus than large corporations were. To my understanding, with the recent stimulus package, large corporations didn't have any requirements for how many people they needed to keep on the payroll and not like fire. And that's just ridiculous. Why are small businesses given more of a burden than large corporations? And it's because we have a system that serves these large corporations and serves big money and serves this money essentially. That is what our system serves. And like I said, I don't hope for acceleration to where we just get to the brink of failure and think change is forced through that. But I do think that is kind of where we're heading. And unless Congress can get its act together and actually pass a stimulus package that will help actual people, things are going to get pretty dicey. I really think that things are going to really start to shake up. I mean, we are heading towards a depression, essentially. I mean, if nothing changes, we are heading towards a depression, and that is incredibly scary. And I really I hope more than anything that Democrats in Congress are able to just pull it together and actually introduce some real legislation that actually helps people. I mean, Nancy Pelosi, there was talk about her like potentially advocating for some sort of universal basic income. I don't know if that's going to happen. I hope so, but I mean, she hasn't really. It was just more floating the idea, and I've lost sight of this. I guess I've gotten a little off topic from this article, but I mean, like I said, incredible. I totally respect this former VP for kind of showing a little bit of solidarity towards these workers. And I do think that this last paragraph is a little interesting. Mr. Bezos said in a statement last week that the company expected to make around $4 billion in operating profit in the next quarter, but he said Amazon expected to spend the entirety of the $4 billion and perhaps a bit more on COVID-related expenses, getting products to customers and keeping employees safe. Wait, whoops. Oh, was this the paragraph right above I wanted to read? The company said last week that online shopping during the pandemic drove sales at Amazon to $75.5 billion in the quarter, up 26% from a year earlier and surpassing analyst expectations. But profit fell 29% to $2.5 billion, due in part to the cost of keeping workers safe. And so I just think it's like a little significant, like the phrasing there that like, oh, profits fell. It's not that there's no profit. It's just that profits aren't as high. Like you got to remember, profit is excess. That is excess. And like I don't have like a problem with profit in principle, but I'm just saying the idea that we're like, oh, a little less profitable. Like that's not struggling. Amazon's doing fine. And it's just, I mean, if you ever needed a better example of how the stock market isn't representative of how the actual economy is doing. I mean, you are literally having like these headlines come out where it'll be like, oh, 3 million people just filed for unemployment, and then like right above that it'll say Dow up 20 points, and it's just like the stock market is while it did have a pretty big crash originally. I mean, it's recovered fairly well, and over the last 3 weeks, I mean, it's done more recovery than it has dropped. It is up. Like if you look like over the last 3 weeks, the stock market right now is higher than it has been in the past 3 weeks. Meanwhile, things haven't gotten better for people, and that shows that the stock market doesn't represent actual how the economy is doing, how actual people are doing. I honestly don't even think that the unemployment numbers are the best things to look at, but I mean they're more accurate than the stock market. And so I think that I always think that all economic indicators are things that you should look at. But I mean, people that just base how the economy is doing off the stock market, I think that that's completely ridiculous. I think that you are just not looking at the whole picture when you look at things like that. Anyway, I had a lot to say about kind of like economics here. If you guys like have anything that you would like me to dive deeper into, please leave a comment down below. I would love to hear like video recommendations. Like I'm willing to talk about virtually anything. And then if you guys disagreed with anything I said, please leave a comment down below. I love to hear different disagreements. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. And then have a great day.